Anybody have any questions?
There's got to be some.
I think I answered some, but I'm happy to answer more. Yeah.
Can I use Headless Chrome to render server-side into other browsers? Like, can I use it to render my Firefox or Safari templates with some guarantee that's going to be the same?
What do you mean by Safari templates?
I'm using server-side rendering.
Yeah.
Can I then render it to Safari browser, Firefox browser?
Yeah. The cool thing about that, the approach that I showed, is that it's just it's just producing markup. It doesn't matter what browser is producing it. It happens to be Headless Chrome on the server, but any browser then can consume HTML. So that's the kind of cool part about it. Yeah.
Can you speak to any learnings or differences from Phantom.js?
Yeah, so I mean, I actually haven't used Phantom.js personally myself, but a lot of people are coming in from that world into Puppeteer and kind of discovering it. I think one thing that I really like about Puppeteer is that it's not an old version of WebKit, so if you do have to test some of these newer features, you can take advantage of that now. But with Phantom, right, I think you can select other browsers too, right? Which you can't do with Puppeteer. It's only Headless Chrome right now. That's kind of a conscious decision, but also just because the DevTools protocol actually has a lot of stuff in it, as I kind of showed, and a lot of the other browsers don't have some of those capabilities yet. So things like network throttling and device emulation, Edge and Firefox are working on some of those protocol APIs, but until the other browsers, until they get those, it's unfortunately we can't have the same API. Yeah.
If I run Puppeteer in the Headless mode, can I combine automated commands with manual user interaction? An application that I'm thinking of is that tracking user, like a human user interaction inside the Headful browser, just like logging, things like that.
So the question was, can you do some manual like user gestures or whatever, and then mix it in with some automation as well? I would say yes. You would just have to figure out a way to, what is your API or protocol that you want to do that? Like if somebody clicks on a button, you would then in your Puppeteer script be waiting for the reaction to that button. Maybe a CSS selector gets applied or something. But yeah, you could totally do that. It would just take a little bit of orchestration on your part. We actually make that case easy right now. Yeah. Hey.
You're doing performance testing with Puppeteer. Is it really different from using browser, Headless or Headful?
The question was, is the performance of Headless different than Headful Chrome? Right?
Headless versus Headful versus browser as user.
In general, the performance, if you're measuring performance of your page using Headful Chrome and Headless Chrome, it's the same thing. Maybe a couple of caveats with that. If you're running a WebGL application in Headless Chrome, there's things where we turn off the GPU, so you might be in a software rendering path versus a GPU rendering path. But for the most part, I think I mentioned this to somebody else, but 99% of the applications will be the exact same. And that's good because if you're running Headless Chrome and a CI and doing performance testing, continuous integration, you want that guarantee that it's not a different setup than a user would actually see. So I think we'd be failing if it wasn't the same. Definitely be less useful. Oh yeah, sorry, I can't see people behind the.
You have a question? There's
Hello.
an audience mic over there. We can repeat.
Yeah, I need to repeat. I'm not good at that.
Any other questions?
Hey.
Use Puppeteer for backward compatibility testing.
For what compatibility?
Backward compatibility. Does it work with older versions of Chrome?
That one's tough because we actually, as Puppeteer revs its version, we also bring in new versions of Chrome as it changes, just to stay up to date with kind of where Chrome is. You could definitely install older versions of Puppeteer that are guaranteed to work with older versions of Chrome. But as soon as you kind of break the guarantee between the Chrome version that we bundle and the Puppeteer version we ship, then you're kind of going off road. But that's not to say it doesn't work, because people are doing that. Like if you really want to target so the use case, the search use case, right? You could use Puppeteer to launch Chrome 41. I don't know if it'll still work because it's pretty old, and the APIs are really old. But you could do that if you install a Chrome 41. You could launch it with Puppeteer. So stuff like that, yeah.
So for Puppeteer, just for other browsers, I think that the minimal thing that would need to happen is other browsers supporting CDP. Yeah. Is there any talks or something? Has any other vendor been interested in implementing CDP? Firefox, Microsoft?
Yeah, definitely. So the question is, to use Puppeteer with other browsers, we would have to have a common like DevTools protocol layer across all the different browsers. And the answer is, yeah, the DevTools engineering lead, I think it was either earlier this year or late last year, there was a kind of a little summit, and they met between Edge and Firefox, and Chrome DevTools was represented. And I think they're at a point where they're actually starting to agree on some of these things. And I think it's either Edge or Firefox that have agreed I think it's Edge that have agreed to basically implement the CDP protocol. So hopefully in the coming months or year or whatever, like you'll see at least that portion being taken care of, and then wouldn't it be too hard to run Puppeteer across Edge then if they have all the APIs.
If Microsoft does implement CDP, is Puppeteer interested in extending support?
I don't see why not.
Besides
I think the benefit of Puppeteer is literally only the high-level APIs, and as long as whatever foundation supports the lowest common denominator, that'd be fine. We really just wanted to make headless Chrome testing and automation really easy, and it just so happens that we held all the bottom pieces and we created a top layer too. But we've already had like many requests for, hey, I want to run Puppeteer against Firefox, right? Because they have headless Firefox now too, and it's just a matter of like those lowest level bits. So yeah, we'll see. I think it's obviously up to the browser vendors, but I think everybody is in agreement that there's some kind of protocol layer that needs to happen, common layer. I saw one question back there. Did you still have a question?
Yeah. So, is there a feature where you can, browse like on the headful Chrome, and then have it translate into the headless code?
What are you trying to do?
I want to do some automation, but I want to click all the user interface first, and then fill out stuff. And
I
then
see.
have
So
it
you want to
translate.
generate the code based
Yeah.
on that comes up a lot, and we don't have that, but anybody could write it if they want to. I'd be happy to highlight it. I think that stuff is cool, and people like for very common things like clicking around a page, like it wouldn't be too hard to generate the code for it. Yeah. Give me the CSS selectors.
DOM components, and you gotta
Yeah.
get the names and stuff. It's hard to
I
do
want
it manually.
I want to say there's open source projects that do that stuff. So maybe you could write an adapter for Puppeteer or something. Yeah, but it's definitely something that comes up. A lot of people want that.
Yeah. So I think one difference that we're seeing in a script that we wrote is between Headful and Headless is stealing focus from the system, essentially, so that when people are trying to work kind of and have it run in the background, when we're running it in Headful, we're seeing the focus being robbed by the browser being loaded. Is there a way around that?
That's a really good question. I don't know off the top of my head, only because like the window management of the OS is not something you deal with Headless. Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I'd have to do research or ask somebody else.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, anytime you hop out of the browser space, it gets tricky. Hey.
Thank you.
It's like Oprah. You're doing good, man.
So the most compelling part of the talk for me had to do with the potential for automated performance testing using Puppeteer. It seems like there might be a reasonable amount of overlap with what you can do with, say, the Lighthouse CLI. So I was wondering if you had any guidance on when you might want to use one versus the other.
Yeah, so Puppeteer's performance stuff is actually pretty limited compared to Lighthouse. Lighthouse is just so much information, and it tells you, the metrics of your page load, gives you information about if your image is too big, gives you information about SEO, accessibility, PWA scores. There's just a lot there. So if you're doing performance testing, definitely use Lighthouse. But where Lighthouse doesn't have things, that's where you can write Puppeteer scripts to fill in those gaps. What we don't have right now, and we're hopefully going to work on it this year at some point, is a good story between Lighthouse and Puppeteer. So you should be able to like launch a site using Puppeteer, maybe log in to some form or something behind a firewall or something, and then run Lighthouse across that. And so that's where the two kind of break down right now. But being able to like change things on the fly using Puppeteer and then audit those changes using Lighthouse, hey, did this make my performance better or worse? Like that would be a really cool story to tell. We're not there yet. Hey.
Would Puppeteer be a good candidate for testing WebRTC spin up multiple Puppeteer instances and WebRTC communication to debug that specific?
I would say if you can do that manually, just with browser windows, you could definitely figure out a way to do it with Puppeteer. Yeah, for sure. That's an interesting use case. Yeah.
Follow up with that actually. Can you capture a page as a video instead of just taking screenshots?
Yeah, this is like our number one feature request right now. DevTools actually has the ability to take a screencast in the DevTools timeline. You can it basically creates thumbnails. You can do that in Puppeteer too. You just get a list of thumbnails when you're taking a trace. But the stitching together and making a video is like the thing people really want. DevTools protocol actually Chrome needs to add an API to make this possible to get good frame rates and stuff. But you can kind of fake it if you have the screenshots right now. But yeah, definitely something a highly requested thing people want.
Other questions? Okay.
So when doing some automated testing, you can use Selenium or you can use Puppeteer, as I can hear. So can you elaborate on where the Puppeteer will excel over Selenium? Maybe some interesting cases.
So we're definitely not trying to replace anything that exists today. We're just trying to make it really easy for Headless Chrome. That was the goal, and I think we did a pretty good job of that. So if you need to test in other browsers, there's things like Selenium that are absolutely there, and you should be using those. In my just personal experience using Selenium, it's hard. It's just hard to use. It's hard to set up. I showed a couple examples where it's 4 lines of code to do something very trivial. So it depends on what you're doing. I was talking to another guy. If you just need to test the correctness of the DOM or something, let's say your page does something, it manipulates the DOM, you need to see the output. Maybe you don't need to test another browser. You just want to know, did this action that the user took, is it correct, and did it produce the correct results? But sometimes you obviously need cross-browser testing as well. So it's really just about what you're doing, what your use cases are. If you need to test in other browsers, and Puppeteer is not a good solution for that.
Any other questions? Going once. All right.
Well, if you have any other questions, hit me up on Twitter. It's @eBidel.
So hard to remember. All right. Thanks, Eric.